Hello and welcome to our American School Culture, Access and Equity for Newcomer English Learners webinar. Presenting today will be David Noyes, a National Board-certified ELD educator from the Long Beach Unified School District in California. Also presenting is Jennifer Cramer, co-founder of Language Tree Online. Now here are just a few housekeeping items before we begin. First, you are all on mute, so please type any questions in the chat window. We will do our best to answer them for you. Second, I wanted to let you know that you will be emailed a link to the webinar recording and other helpful information in a few days, so please keep an eye out for that. And lastly, at the end of the webinar, we will be giving away a gift card. The attendee who is the first to answer a question regarding the webinar content correctly will be the winner. So please pay close attention and good luck. And now let's get started. David?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to go over just a few of the buckets or the learning for today. And it's on the next slide. We're going to start by identifying the need for resources related to acculturation for our newcomers in middle and high school. And we're going to move on to covering a few topics related to the American school culture. From there, we're going to talk a little bit about the American School Culture Project and how it came to its synthesis. And then lastly, we're also going to give you an opportunity to see the lesson real time. Okay, we'll go ahead and move into that next slide.
Sorry, David, took a minute there. Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Cramer with Language Tree. And yeah, I wanted to kind of give everybody a little background on how this came to fruition. David had worked with us on a project before with our Spanish Online, and he came to us a couple of years ago and asked if we'd be open to meet with the EL coach team at Long Beach Unified School District. They're a very large district. They have like 17 English learner coaches there. And he really felt strongly, and David's always been very passionate about his work, that we could do a whole lot more to support our secondary emerging newcomer English learners. And he was, kind of flabbergasted at what was going on, not only in his district and our state, but across the United States. And David speaks at a lot of different conferences and things. And so we spent a day really, a couple of years ago, really getting a thorough understanding of what was going on. And after that, we decided to take this on. We thought we could do something that would not only be very helpful for teachers and educators, but specifically to really help these secondary English learners. And one of the things that I always like to do before, I get into a project that's geared for a specific audience, I want to talk and understand from their perspective, from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So we went on this exercise with the production team where we went out and we interviewed newcomer students, and it was really, really telling. And it very much hit home for me because, I have a teenager, and I thought, how difficult would it be to be plopped into a new country with a different language, a totally different school environment, and a completely different culture. And what was really interesting to me, and I like to always say this to educators, is that their concern across the board really wasn't about academics whatsoever. Their number one concern was, how do I make a friend and how do I fit in? And that made perfect sense to me because at that age, your body's going through so much as it is. And then, put all those other factors on top of it. You just want to feel comfortable and that you're a part of something and that you have a friend, someone to lean on.
And I had the opportunity through my job as an English learner coach in the district to spent some time at middle and high schools where I was coaching and kind of shadowing the newcomers that were arriving on a daily basis, by the way. We just have had a major influx of newcomers in our schools, not just speaking Spanish, but multiple languages, Arabic, Khmer. So I had an opportunity just to shadow these students over the course of 3 days. And since my second language is Spanish, I had an opportunity to kind of have some dialogue before shadowing those students, and then spend the day going to each of their classes, nutrition break, as well as just kind of hovering around lunch, not staying too close. And then kind of seeing what happens at the culmination of the day. And one of the things that I discovered with the 3 different students that I shadowed is they only spoke English during the day just at the most 5 times. And that was in class. And I noticed that they were never called upon. They never raised their hands. And they oftentimes were just kind of hidden or hiding in the classrooms and sitting attentively, which gives that, that teacher the signal that everything's fine. But it was just a really big, it was a really big eye opener for me. And as I kind of started asking questions about what the things that they knew about the school environment and how they felt about being in school, it just really opened up a lot of conversation around them never being introduced to the different areas of the school, not really knowing what to do during class. There were some cultural differences that they didn't understand, and nobody was really there to help them. And so that is really kind of the synthesis of this project, if you will. Okay, go ahead and move on. So this is these are the buckets or the chapters that we wanted to talk about today briefly, but just give you some insight into some of the topics that came up during my interviews and my observations with the students, some of their concerns, some of their deficits, things that they feel like they didn't really understand. And they all come down to these topics on the tree map, which is school day and school rules, class participation, school resources, morning, break, lunch, holidays was one of the big topics, since they are well celebrated in the United States and at school sites. And then extracurricular activities was also one of the big topics when I had some discussion with these students. So we're going to take you through each of these topics and add some information, so you'll see kind of an accumulation of information. So feel free to make your own tree map or just take notes accordingly, because we will have this tree map completed by the end of our time together.
Oops. So yeah, so let's talk about the first section, the school day and school rules. One of the things that we really tried to do was get a lot of input from educators across the country, because while all of our public schools have a fair amount of similarities, there are some differences. For example, some schools have lockers, some schools do not. Some schools say the Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning of the day, others do not. So what we wanted to do was provide as much widespread common information as possible to help these students become acclimated in their new school environment. And even if some of those things don't apply to their specific school situation, it would still be good information to know. And you know, and also helping them acquire functional vocabulary. Like, you know, we've learned in many other countries, you know, belongings don't go in a locker, they go into cubbies. So, you know, locker is another word for cubby. It could be, you know, help them kind of understand where things go. So this is just a couple of screenshot examples to show you, you know, the locker image and the keyword is also brought up. So you hear it, you see it. And then, you know, if you don't have a locker, you know, keep your things in your backpack. And then there's an interactive piece that, again, this isn't like a, you know, a standardized test. It's really just helping them acquire that functional vocabulary and help them ensure that they're retaining what they've seen in the input information. And then from there, there's expanded vocabulary builder, and really just that scaffolded content based on that same topic of school day and school rules. So, you know, it talks about like clothing items that you can wear to school, but really expanding on that and getting into not only clothing, but colors applicable to that. And then having an audio bank for them to look at the word, hear the word, and that whole access and equity piece to ensure that we're trying to help these students in every way possible retain this information, and then try to make some fun with it with some drag and drop exercises, looking at the particular image, selecting the appropriate word, and then dragging it you know, into the correct box.
So moving on to class participation, I did just want to add around the clothing items. Something that we discovered was if the students were placed into beginning English language development classes at their middle and high school sites, they were taught clothing items and colors, but that was at the beginning of the year. So what was interesting is we were having newcomers coming into our schools throughout the year, and so technically all of that information was already taught. So these students were already, just within the first couple of weeks, we were creating gaps because they didn't have that functional vocabulary around clothing items, colors. So we wanted to make sure that we were able to capture that in these chapters. So in class participation, this was particularly interesting to me to ask the students about if they understood some of the social norms or school norms around class participation. For example, raising your hand, asking to use the restroom, knowing where books are organized or where the bookcases were, what a pencil was, a pen, those kinds of things. Really functional items that we take for granted as English speakers. But if we were to be, if someone were to identify that same item in a different language, if we were in a different country, unless we saw a picture of it, or the teacher did some physical response or held it up, the students, or if I were in that position, I wouldn't understand what they were talking about, even though I know exactly what a pencil or a pen is. So we really tried to focus on functional items that you would find in a classroom, and kind of calling that out. That was one of the concerns that the students had. They didn't really understand some of the class routines, but having some of that background really helped them feel like they had a little more confidence in terms of being able to kind of participate in the classroom environment. Let's go ahead and move on to that next slide.
Sorry, David, the computer's going crazy. There you go.
So this is the functional vocabulary activity. We wanted to connect it to some sentence structure, some things that they might be hearing in class, which they may not connect to unless we started kind of providing some context around not only the classroom items, but some of the tasks that they might be performing in the class, and that's where you see some of that functional vocabulary embedded into some directions, if you will. Again, adding the picture and the audio resource, so we have some multi-sensory input going on for our students, especially if they're not readers, English readers yet. They get to hear it and see it.
Yeah, and I wanted to, before we move to the next slide, I just wanted to open it up because, you know, it's hard to communicate through a webinar, but I'd love to hear from any of you, if you want to put it in the chat, some of the things that you have found with working with these, entry-level English learners, some of the things that are really important that you have found that they need to know that they haven't known, or have any, personal experiences you'd want to share. I'd love to hear about it. Does everybody know where the chat is? Hopefully. Christy, are there any chats coming in?
Just
No,
a response saying that they know
questions.
what the chat is.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry,
All right,
was
should
David?
we move on to the next?
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah, we'll move on. Okay. So we just added some there to the tree map as we're building here. School resources. So this was something else. Again, talking with a lot of educators and David's firsthand experiences with working with these students is just knowing what's available to them. A lot of these students from other countries, they don't have all the great resources that our schools have in America, and knowing what to do if you're not feeling good, to raise your hand and you can get permission to go to the nurse's office, or maybe you have a lot of test anxiety, or you need help academically figuring out maybe what you want to do after high school, getting that help from an academic counselor. But the most important thing is knowing that that's available and that you can go to the main office and get this type of help. The other big one, which was really interesting, is the vast majority of these students did not know there's a school portal that they could access. So if they miss school or miss class for whatever reason, they can go in and log in and see what was covered that day and make up the work or homework assignments. So knowing that that's available and how to create your username and passcode to, again, be able to get pertinent information if you miss class.
And that was another interesting topic for me that I completely overlooked, because we have many teachers at our middle and high schools that they post many of their assignments through their school portal, and these students never knew how to log in and access it, and nobody ever sat down and showed them how. So I had to point out to the teachers that they couldn't access the assignments because they didn't know how to log into their own portal. And so that was surprising to the teachers, but it did give them some opportunities to sit down and work with those students and show them how to access their assignments.
Right. And again, just taking that a little bit further and helping, these students with the functional vocabulary, not just, the places and resources, but also who works who works in the library, the librarian, in the gymnasium, the PE teacher, the teacher in the classroom, and trying to piece those elements together, and not just having random vocabulary words, but really scaffolding that content and taking it each piece a little bit further. So helping these students understand what's available to them, the different places in the school, and also who works in those different places. So, and I think a big confusion for the students is the whole concept of PE and physical education. We use these terms interchangeably, but that can be tough if you don't know the language and you're not sure, what someone's referring to.
All right. So this next chapter is morning break and lunch. Another very kind of fascinating chapter for me, because I had the opportunity to observe these students during both morning break and lunch, and just see how they interacted with the other students. And I asked them questions about the food that they brought versus the food items that are available on campus. And many of them didn't know that there were 3 different places that they were able to get food from. And I asked them about food items, things that they might choose, healthy versus not healthy. And there was a lot of questions around that. So many of them just brought a snack from home, but it wasn't always the healthiest snack. And the other thing that also came up during all of this morning and lunch break was students actually receive credits for getting food based on their income level, and just being able to process some of their applications was a really great thing that we were able to provide for these students. And again, without having that knowledge, understanding how all of this works, it would have never really come to fruition. So we connected the morning break and lunch with food items. So this is just another way to layer in some of that functional vocabulary, foods that they may or may not have some background on, some of their schema or prior knowledge. We were able to provide them with items that they would see in a school environment, most likely. So we were able to provide them with, again, just some more building of that vocabulary that may have been overlooked in their English language development classes.
Okay, so next up is American holidays and traditions. And, you know, honestly, this is my favorite section because I really feel like, you know, in the United States, we have some very interesting holidays and traditions. And, you know, being in the school environment, these students are exposed to all this. And oftentimes, you know, I think David made the anecdote before. He's had students ask, well, why are all these people wearing green, you know, on April Fool's Day, and if you don't wear it, you get pinched type of thing. So I think it's a great way, and there's no better way really to get comfortable with a culture than to gain knowledge on the holidays and traditions. As we know, Halloween is very interesting. One of our most widely celebrated holidays, the 4th of July. So really just exposing them to the different holidays and helping them understand some of the traditions that correspond to that holiday. So, and then again, you know, layering in the scaffolding, this content from holidays and traditions that happen, you know, the 12 months of the year, then that easily flows into the months of the year, and understanding the months of the year and what holidays fall in those particular months, and having, you know, some interactivity and exercises to make it kind of fun and more drag and drop type of exercises.
All right, and we're on to our last kind of explanation of the last chapter, and it's extracurricular activities. This was, I feel like I had many surprises, and I'm almost 30 years in my educational career, and I still am always humbled by some of the experiences that I get to see what our students are going through. One of them had to obviously to do with extracurricular activities. Many of the students, because of the backgrounds that they came from culturally, they didn't have as many opportunities to participate in extracurricular activities. So they didn't have a lot of knowledge around which ones existed and which ones that they might want to try. And not knowing that they could just participate in these sports, whether it was intramural or organized sports, that anybody could actually be part of the team. That was kind of an eye-opener for them. And one of the things that was expressed throughout my time with these students was the fact that a big concern for them was they wanted to be able to fit in and they wanted to make friends. That was one of the biggest concerns for them. They wanted to connect with people, and this is one of the ways that can happen. So I spent some time kind of developing some knowledge around what extracurricular activities were offered at the different school sites. And it was a great opportunity for me to connect the action verbs around those things. What do you do if you join the swim team? You are swimming. On track, you are jumping and running. So I gave this, this was an incentive to embed some more functional vocabulary, which is action verbs. And so this is how we kind of connected the extracurricular activities and then provided them also with some functional language opportunities. So that brings us to kind of the all of those buckets with a little bit of information. It kind of gives you some insight into how we were addressing these different topics. I just wanted to kind of explain the whole synthesis behind this project. This was part of my national boards over the course of 3 years, and my cultural component, which is one of the components that I had to complete. But I took on this task around providing some opportunities to create resources around American school culture in middle and high school. And what really developed at these sites was just a general understanding of how important it is to provide this background for our students, and some of that, it sounds trite, but some of that really essential language for them to be able to function. The news kind of spread at our sites, and teachers, by educating teachers around this and creating some resources and components, it really started to take off, and teachers were empowered and students were feeling comfortable. And so we're still seeing the beginnings of all this, but this is kind of where I took this to the next level, and I was able to spend some time with Language Tree and creating actual digital components around this. So my resources were leveled up when it came to creating some of the digital aspects that Language Tree was able to offer.
Okay, so what we would like to do now is I wanted to just show you a quick demo. And again, feel free if anybody has questions or comments, go ahead and put it in the chat. So let me escape out of here and go into the demo. So I have already logged in, and excuse me, I'm going to close this out. I've logged into the resource already. So let's go into the American culture that we've been talking about. And I think what I'd like to do, it's a brief video, but I'd like to just show you a short video to start to give you an idea of the information that we got from a couple of the newcomer students that we had interviewed.
I'm from Thailand, and the school is very different. In Thailand, they have a uniform, but here it doesn't have a uniform. In Thailand, when waiting for next class, we have to stay in the room where teacher is gonna come. But in America, you have to walk to the next class.
I'm from the Dominican Republic, and I think my school from Dominican Republic, it was different that we used to use all the time uniforms, and I don't know, it was like math, it was easier. Here it's kind of hard.
I feel how do I make a friend, because I can't speak any English, but I didn't worry about a language.
Oh, to be honest, I was really scared. I didn't understand anything. I was just confused, looking around, what is going on? Yeah.
Yes, it's really different. In American culture is I really don't know about American culture, but in Thailand, we say hi, have to do this to teacher.
But I remember that I used to talk like really weird. I didn't know what I was saying, but I said, oh, I'm talking English, but I didn't know what I was saying, you know, like just saying something really crazy.
I'm very confused about math, science, and history. It's pretty hard to understand it.
The first day of school, there was a girl next to me, my partner, and she was telling me to put the books in the desk, and I was like, trying to tell me, and I was like, what? And when she did it to me, I was like, oh, now I know. She was trying to tell me to put the books in the desk inside.
Okay, so we talked about the 6 chapters, the school and school rules, and it all follows a very similar format where we have the video input in English or Spanish, then the interactive piece, and then lastly the vocabulary builder. Sorry, I thought somebody was trying to ask something. So we'll go down to school resources, morning break and lunch, holidays and traditions, and then extracurricular activities. But I wanted an opportunity just to show you one, to give you an idea. So let's look at holidays and traditions.
A fun way to learn about a culture is to participate in their traditions. Here are a few key holidays that Americans celebrate. But remember, school is closed on some, but not all. January 1st is New Year's Day. The night before is called New Year's Eve, and that's when people attend parties and celebrations that last throughout midnight. On New Year's Day, there's a famous college football game known as the Rose Bowl. Friends and families often get together to watch the historic Rose Parade that happens before the game and the Rose Bowl game on TV. New Year's Day is also a time of creating New Year's resolutions, which are promises to yourself to improve in a particular area, such as exercising more or being nicer to your sister. Every third Monday in January is a school holiday recognizing Martin Luther King Jr. He was a leader in the African American civil rights movement. Valentine's Day on February 14th is not an official day off from school, but it is a fun celebration of love and romance. People exchange greeting cards, flowers, candy, and gifts with those they care about.
Okay, I think I'll stop there because I think everybody, gets the gist, but I did want to show you just a snippet of it in Spanish. So one of the things that we did as we developed this is, we have presented it in different seminars across the country, and although there's obviously a lot of languages, coming from speaking a lot of different languages, by and far, the vast majority are native Spanish speakers, so we were asked several times that it would be very helpful if the video content could also be in Spanish. I'll show you a snippet of it in Spanish.
Una manera divertida de aprender una cultura es participando en sus tradiciones. Aquí están las principales festividades que los americanos celebran. Las escuelas cierran en algunos días festivos, pero no en todos. El 1 de enero es día de Año Nuevo. La noche anterior es llamada víspera de Año Nuevo y es cuando la gente asiste a fiestas y celebraciones que duran hasta la medianoche. En el día de Año Nuevo hay un famoso supertazón de fútbol americano conocido como The Rose Bowl. Amigos y familias.
Okay, so I think you get the gist. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can mute. On mute here. Give me just 1 minute, please. Is everybody able to mute their microphones? There's just a little bit of feedback. So, okay. Anyway, so let me show you what the quiz area looks like.
Select the correct image for each vocabulary word. New Year's resolution.
And, you know, it can be fun because the students can check real time. Let's say they select the one, they can check their work to see if they get it right or wrong. And they can see they get it wrong and try again. So again, it's just helping reinforce not only the vocabulary words, but the vocabulary words that correspond with a particular holiday. And sorry, go ahead, David. Go ahead.
I was just gonna, I work pretty closely with English language development teachers at the sites, and kind of developing these chapters, getting input from them. It really helped them to kind of use these lessons as a way to kind of elevate opportunities for more language learning. So they used the kind of the concepts to develop more language. So it was just a nice way. It gave them more of a place to start from, or kind of a starting point where they can create more chapters around some of that, not just the concepts, but building the language. So.
Yeah, thanks, David. Yeah, so the exercises, there's quite a few, and it goes on and on, but I'll go back up because I just want to show you one last section. And this is the vocabulary builder. So I'm logged in as an administrator, so I've been in here quite a bit.
Let's review the months of the year. January, February, March, April, May.
So again, just taking, what would be natural for the holidays are the months of the years, and then having the drag and drop exercise that
Look at the calendar below. Put the months of the year in the correct order by selecting each month and dropping it into the calendar.
You can see how that works. Whoops, I let go too soon. So I think you get the idea. And then again, they can check their work along the way and keep going with the review. And then there's more interactive exercises. So I'll just give you a feel for these.
Click play to listen and read the clues about the holiday. Select the correct holiday image. Jokes. Sense of humor.
So that is really the long and short of it. I'm going to switch gears back over to the presentation, because one of the things that we wanted to do was have a raffle question. And again, the first person to answer, there is a giveaway here. But what are some of the biggest concerns of newcomer students? If you want to put your answer in the chat, that would be great. Okay. We're getting a lot of great answers. Do you want to read those off, or would you like, Christy, or would you like me to?
Oh, sure. The first one we have is making a friend. The second one is how do we fill their educational gaps? The third is making friends, navigating the school, not understanding the classes, how will they join the club activities, class rules and school resources.
Yeah, a lot of, a lot of great answers. And I think, well, I know that Studica has a great raffle prize. So I think it goes to the first person, the making a friend. So if you want to pass along your information in the chat, like your email or how they can contact you. And then David, a question came up here is, how do we fill in the educational gaps?
Boy, that's a great question. And that wouldn't that be nice if we had the answer? In terms of educational gaps, this was created just for the cultural aspect. The other part of my, I mean, without going into too much detail, but the other part of my national boards project in which language tree actually elevated a little bit was I started doing some backwards planning around the standards for newcomers. So I created a standards-based assessment and lessons that support the emerging or the beginning level of language acquisition. So it really is looking at first an assessment and then providing resources that support those language standards that will help them acquire language more quickly and move them out of that newcomer or beginning level of language acquisition. I hope that that made sense.
Yeah, and I wanted to just add that we will be doing, along with our partner Studica, we will be doing another webinar in May. I believe it's May 31st to be exact, but it will be on what David was just discussing, you know, more ways to support our entry-level English learners, and really looking at the standards and correlating lessons that are aligned with the latest standards. So, but I just wanted to say thank you all very much for your time. We appreciate you coming. I hope that you gained some good information, and yeah, let us know if you have any questions or anything else going forward.
Yes, thank you, everyone.